let's just jump right into it if that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So my goal for this is kind of to ask you questions maybe other people who interview you about your book haven't asked, because I think a lot of information should be in the book. And if someone's smart enough, they'll go read the book and they'll find what they need. I'm looking to get more layers, I guess, about you, your motivation for the book, and maybe some stuff like that. So everyone who's here with us and going to be doing this are mostly young entrepreneurs, 20s, 30s, starting their business, starting their career. And one of the things that comes up a lot is, what do they do in the morning to be successful? And you're obviously someone who's achieved a lot in your career. And what I guess the first question I want to know is, what does a normal day look like for you? And do you have a morning ritual, something that you do every morning that helps you?
Yeah, well, if I can, I mean, one of our rules in negotiation, which is also just coping with everything you're doing in life, is you're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. Sean Acker had a pretty interesting podcast called The Happiness Advantage, where he pointed that out. He's a Harvard psychologist. It's a pretty entertaining podcast anyway. But some of the cliche stuff that's out there, and I would have called it cliche because I'm originally a Midwestern guy and we're kind of blue collar. But starting out the day with just citing different things that you're grateful for. I mean, that automatically puts you in a better frame of mind, smarter frame of mind. It kicks your brain into gear a little bit quicker. It's along with my cup of coffee and other external caffeine boosts. I mean, dialing myself into the day in a way that I can be productive as quickly as possible is really just, trying to dial up what I'm grateful for, and I'll be smarter. I'm smarter in negotiations if I can remind myself that, like we all got first world problems, and I was doing some preparation for negotiation a couple of years ago, and the person that I was negotiating with, they get different corporate values, cultural values, personal values than I do. And because of that, it was we're no longer doing business with them, but I was in a negative frame of mind because I just don't like this person. But then I realized, I'm lucky to be in this negotiation at all. The reason why they're trying so hard to make this deal with us and exploit us is because my company's really good and we can really help them out. So I'm actually lucky to be in the conversation. And as soon as I said to myself, I'm lucky to be in this at all, I mean, I felt an instant change in my ability to cope with the negotiation.
Yeah, I think that's super useful. Do you have any way of going about it? Like, you wake up and you just kind of think about the things you're grateful for first, and then you drink your coffee and you're off?
Well, I've actually got a journal that I try to write in the morning. And even if I don't write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, I take the journal with me when I travel, and the mere fact that I've got it with me reminds me and helps keep me in a positive frame of mind. So, it's almost, some things you touch and they make you feel good.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that I did, it's around it, just having it with me makes me happy.
That's awesome. And you mentioned, you were talking about that negotiation. You didn't like the person because of different values. Do you think that in terms of creating likability between people, that we have the same values is the most important thing that contributes to that feeling of likability and we're in this together kind of thing?
Well, you touched on a couple of interesting points simultaneously that if you could draw some lines. The first one, this whole likability thing. I mean, you don't have to be liked to be likable. Mm-hmm. And if some people want to be liked, and if you want to be liked, you've taken yourself hostage. You put the other person at an advantage, and in many cases, the sharks that are out there sense your need to be liked and will exploit that. If the same kind of guy will sense your need to treat them fairly, like it's why a lot of negotiators will say, that's not a fair deal. They're trying to hit one of your feelings of needing to be liked, because how can you be liked if you're treating them unfairly? So you need to. We're all better off when we draw a distinction in our mind, the difference between needing to be liked and being likable. Mm. Now, if I'm likable, people always ask me where I got this stat. You're 6 times more likely to make a deal with somebody you like. I threw that out because I heard Stuart Diamond cite that once. Stuart Diamond is a Wharton negotiation professor. He wrote Getting More, ridiculously analytical guy. If Stuart Diamond cites a stat, it's probably a pretty good stat. I mean, he's a brilliant researcher. He's read a lot of stuff. So, there's an advantage to being likable. People, it sounds stupid, but you want to make deals with people you like. You want to have a good long-term relationship. It increases your deal-making ability to be likable. So if you're a mercenary, if you don't care about people, you want to be likable because you make more deals. If you care about people, you want to be likable because they'll be happier doing business with you. So, that's a bit of a rant or a riff on the whole likability concept.
It's great, man. Yeah. So who was Chris's mentor when he was younger, and what was the most important lesson that you gleaned from that person?
Well, I think I had some unofficial mentors at different points in time. Like I knew who to ask for advice, or there's a saying out there that says never take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with. Hmm. Now, I made the mistake of taking advice a couple of times from people that I would never have traded places with, and I don't know if it's selection bias on my part, but I look back and none of that advice was ever good. But then if there was somebody that I would trade places with, or had something that I wanted to and I listened to, then their advice ended up being very good, because they knew what they were talking about. Gary Nessner was the head of the crisis negotiation unit when I got recruited to go there. Gary was a mentor. I listened to what he said. What he said made sense. I tried to learn from what he did. I remember after he retired, occasionally I would call him and I'd say, I still hear your words coming out of my mouth because I learned from you. But he was good at it. He was successful in an area that I wanted to be good at. Yeah. So if they were good in an area that I wanted to be good in, then I paid attention to them.
Yeah. So switching gears here, how did you choose the title for this book? And did you know it would become the massive hit that it's become?
No, had no idea. I mean, you hope. You hope that it affects people's lives, that you get so much feedback from so many people that it's making a difference in their personal and professional life, or that they're making deals that they never expected to make, or they've raised the level of the game so much. They send me emails, they want to be on my staff. Because they're having such a great time. But you hope for that. That's what you aspire to. But I'm still very surprised by it. I'm going through the Phoenix airport yesterday, and a guy stops me and he says, "Hey man, I got your book and it's making a difference in my life." And you hope for that, but you don't expect it. Now the title, I think it's really cool that you asked me about the title, because Tal Raz, our co-author, came up with the title. We had a working title when we first got started, kicked it back and forth. I worked with a variety of authors. But once we got started on it, Tal, who's a brilliant writer, I mean, read anything Tal Raz has written. He co-authored Never Eat Alone with Keith Ferrazzi. Mm-hmm. Tal is the best business book writer on the planet. And if there's an area of business that you're looking at, and one of those books has been co-written by Tal, buy that book. He's a genius. He's a researcher. He's smart. But anyway, we're working on the book, and he said, as I work through your material and I absorb it and we get it ready, at some point in time, a phrase is going to jump out. And we were probably about 3/4 of the way through finishing the book when he said, "Man, the title of this is Never Split the Difference." I mean, that's the essence of what you guys are about. And that's how we came up with the title. It was Tal's suggestion.
Unbelievable. Because obviously, as you know, nailing down that title, it plays a huge role in the sales of the book. And what we do I do so much marketing online and different split testing with ads and videos and things like that. And it's that in 3 seconds or less, someone's got to decide, does this interest me or not? Does this hook me or not? And I think when people hear Never Split the Difference, it's an instant grabber. It's captivating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. So let's talk a little bit, I guess, about some of the stuff inside the book, or some of the just concepts about negotiation. Like, someone with all your experience and all the different dimensions that you've worked in, like when you're meeting someone for the first time, whether it's in a negotiation or it's a dude at the airport who's telling you how much he loved your book, like what are some of the things that, like, that let you know if this person is I don't want to say good person, bad person, but, you know, high integrity, low integrity? Like, I'm sure a lot of it's happening, you know, subterranean now, it's unconscious, but what are some of the, I guess, the metrics you're looking for that let you know what kind of person that person is?
Well, you know, my gut instinct, I'm just looking to see if we resonate early on. You know, and so our gut instinct is ridiculously more powerful than we really realize. I read a book not too long ago called The Biology of Belief. Thomas Lippman, I think, is the author. And he says that, and his stat was the conscious mind processes roughly 40 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind processes 20 million. I mean, it's a staggering difference. Mm-hmm. So, and the more that we look to rely on our gut, the more we test our gut, the more we're willing to be wrong. You know, you gotta test your gut. If you got a bad feeling, you gotta find ways to sort of follow up to see if your bad feeling is accurate. You know, I'm certainly willing to make mistakes. There was a guy that was advising me on PR when I first came to Los Angeles 4 years ago. And my gut instinct on most of his ideas were, I don't think it's going to make that much difference. But then I went ahead and went through the experiences. And I continued to build my data bank, my intuition, my gut instinct. So your gut instinct, if you're not sure, my advice is to go ahead and go through it and find out. You're going to get that much more sensitive. So if I resonate well with somebody early on, are they dismissing what I have to say? They could be a good person and we still might not be a great fit. Right. Like these days, I believe in two things simultaneously. I believe that 90% of the people that are out there, I don't want to do business with. I also believe that of that 10%, there are 350 million people in the United States alone. That means there's 35 million people out there that I want to do business with. You know, that it's still a ridiculously abundant world. I think the world is phenomenally abundant, even with only wanting to deal with 10% of the planet. You know, because we got core values that match up, you know, whatever it is about us, and no bad on the other 90%, they're just not for me. Yeah. So I want to find that 10% as quickly as I can. So I'm willing to listen to my gut, and then follow up and make sure. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt, but I'll keep my guard up. So right. I'm going to talk to my Lyft driver, or maybe what is it about them that's turning me off? Like my Lyft driver last night, fascinating dude. You know, we might be friends, we might hang out. I would never do business with him. You know, so what are those distinctions? Are they great people, but you won't do business with them? Are they maybe a little bit dodgy, but for the moment doing business with them is a good idea? You know, again, the person I was talking about earlier, it benefited us overall to remain in business with people we did not trust for over 2 years, because the global benefits to the company were really strong. And I knew that they were going to come to an end at some point in time, but our net gain was much higher in that finite interaction. So, you know, I guess I'm assessing people on a lot of levels, and friendship and whether or not to do business with them might be completely independent.
Totally. And when you're doing business with that person that you don't trust, but the net gain is positive, are you just putting things in place to basically protect any potential downside that could happen? Kind of, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not kidding myself about, if you can't trust them, it means, you know, what they say doesn't matter, and get it in writing. and understand what you have in writing, and just be really clear about it, and, you know, understand where, you know, like they say, the big print give it, the fine print taketh away. You know, they're going to try to sneak something past you in a fine print, and don't feel bad about just, you know, when we get a contract we don't like, we don't negotiate over the contract. We just change it. We don't even bother asking. We just go ahead and change it.
Mm. So when you meet someone who's reading your book, and let's say, like you mentioned before, that need to be liked and how much that can really screw someone up in deals. They'll start conceding all kinds of things they didn't want to just to avoid being disliked or being called an asshole or a dick or something like that. So like, what advice do you have for that person who just has this, they were probably programmed from a young age, just need to be liked, but it's screwing them over now as an adult in all their deal making?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because at some point in time, you have to be willing to be abrupt if necessary. I mean, I struggle a lot with how can I be abrupt nicely? Mm. And the person who's trying really hard to hold me hostage, I even as a hostage negotiator, I was famous for hanging up on terrorists. I mean, I'll hang. If you're trying to kick my ass, and I try to get you to stop, and you won't stop, and you think I need to stay there and be abused, I mean, I'll hang up. I mean, it shocked people, but I'd hang up. And I was at a business negotiation the other day, and I reserved the right to say no. I hung up on an attorney. And I don't know what he was trying to prove, because we were both sort of pitching strategy at his client. And suddenly I said, we're just not going to be able to work together. You're not prepared to be coached by me.
Yeah.
He found that highly insulting. But the mere fact that he found it highly insulting was a sign, that he was just, if he was coachable in the first place, if I'd have said, you're not prepared to be coached by me, he'd say, wow, what am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. Which then would have meant that my diagnosis was bad.
Correct.
But when I said, look, you're not coachable. You're not prepared to be coached by me. Oh, yes, I am. And then he came back with me and he said, those are fighting words. That's what he said to me on the phone. And I thought, we're from different worlds, because I spent, I'm from Iowa, but I spent some time on the streets of New York City. Fighting words precede actual fighting. So I'm going to take that as meaning that you expect me to punch you. And if we're physically in proximity, I am going to punch you. And that is not my assessment of this conversation right now. And I hung up on the guy. I said, okay, well, I'm not staying in a conversation. I reserve the right to say no. And I hung up, which we feel is very abrupt. In point of fact, his client texted me an apology for his behavior later on. So what is it to us and what is it to them? They get the message that we're not there to be abused.
And what gave you the confidence? You're famous for hanging up on terrorists. Like, what gave you the confidence to know that in that moment that was probably the right move to make?
I think I did it by accident. My gut instinct, and it was really from my suicide hotline days. I spent a lot of time on a suicide hotline, and I once actually hung up on a guy that claimed that he was suicidal. Now, what he told me on the phone about being suicidal was he called the hotline and he said, I want you to listen to me die. Now, I know enough from my training that, all right, so if this guy's idea of death involves me being a witness to it, then maybe the best way I can stop him from killing himself is to not be his witness. If he needs a witness to die, then my only way to disrupt this plan is to refuse to be the witness. And I'm actually doing them a favor by hanging up. And later on, then I took that same attitude to when we were dealing with terrorists. And I once hung up on a guy, and the guy called back and apologized. So I learned it to be sort of a last resort, but there's something we call boundary setting. You got to set boundaries with people that are intentionally kicking your ass. Now, hanging up on them is not your first move, but it needs to be on your list of moves. It's the same as, it's a version of saying no. Like in the book, we teach basically 4 ways to say no. The first one is a pretty soft way to say no. The way the book starts out with kind of the famous phrase, how am I supposed to do that? That's meant to express no in a very gentle fashion. A friend of mine here in Los Angeles is Ned Colletti, who used to be the general manager for the Dodgers. Ned's first year as GM of the Dodgers, they went from last place to first place, worst to first. You know, because the guy's a sports GM doesn't mean he's a good negotiator. If they went from last to first, he's probably a good negotiator. The GM of the Lakers right now isn't doing so good, right? You would say that they're a great negotiator. But anyway, Ned had a phrase that he shared with me one time when we were talking about this, and he said, "I like to let out no a little at a time." You know, a good negotiator, good person in personal relationships, you want to express no a little at a time. You don't want to hit somebody with it abruptly, but you do want to be prepared to say no clearly. And after that, I mean, then the strongest way to say no is to just hang up. It's not a first move, but you want to telegraph to people, if you do hang up, they never say that you didn't warn them. They never say that you didn't give them ample warning that it was coming.
Yeah, they should expect it. It should be, yeah, it shouldn't get them off guard. So I want to be respectful of your time here, Chris. I got one final question for you. And this is the famous Peter Thiel question, right? The billionaire investor. And something he asks everyone is, what very important truth do few people agree with you on? So if I asked you that, what would you say?
It depends upon, the main one really is, whether or not you should go first and whether or not you should anchor high in a negotiation. We got some pushback on that behind the scenes before the book came out. The academics, the Harvard Business School, the Wharton guys, they'll all tell you to go first and go high. The top business practitioners will tell you the opposite. They're the ones who say he or she who names price first loses. So depends upon who's disagreeing with me on that point. The super sharp people, the savvy business negotiators, they don't want to go first and they don't want to go high. They want to know what you have to say before they finish their calculations. The academics all disagree with me on that point.
And till your dying day, you're sticking to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome, man. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for your time, dude. This was super helpful. Went a little bit over time. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for the book because it had a legitimate impact on me. Some of the concepts were new, some of them were reinforced, but it was gripping, man. The whole thing was great, really, truly. And so we bought copies for every one of our members, and all these guys here and these girls here are reading it too. So thank you so much, man, and look forward to talking with you soon at some point.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Have a good day. Good luck, everybody.
All right, man. Enjoy. Peace.
Hey, did you find that valuable? If you did, then you may want to know at the link below, you now have a 7-day free trial to a mentorship program where I'm personally mentoring you every week, answering all your questions. So many of you on YouTube have joined already. You guys are amazing. If you're not in yet, the link below, you still have a 7-day free trial. I'd love to mentor you even more than I can in these videos. And if you haven't hit subscribe, make sure you subscribe too. I love you. You're amazing. I'll see you soon. Peace.